Hello. Today I will be teaching you how to play chess. Thank you, returning viewers, for coming back. I appreciate you. And hello, new viewers. Please subscribe and like this video. This is a pawn. The pawn on its first move can either move two spaces forward, here, or it can move one space forward, here. If it moves two spaces on its first move, white cannot move it two more spaces. White can now only move a pawn one more space. So, in this case, where white's first move would be their king's pawn out two spaces to e4, if black would respond their queen's pawn out to d5, these pawns can only attack diagonally, meaning here and here. They cannot move backwards. You cannot take a piece here, so if we do not take and they move a pawn here, we cannot just push their pawn away into non-existence. You have to attack either here or here with your pawn. So that would mean here or here for this pawn, here or here for this pawn right here. If we're talking about the queen's pawn, they can attack here and here. So only in diagonals. Now, let's talk about the kings. The kings could be the most important piece on the board because they are the key to winning. If you take the opponent's king, then you win. If they take your king, you lose. Now, the king can move in any direction, only one space. So right now the king can move here, 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 and here. And same with the opponent. Now, the way you can win is called checkmate. It is where the king is in check, which is another way of saying the king is in danger of one of our pieces, and cannot move out of check. So I'm going to show you an example now. So, with white having two rooks on the A and H file, we can move our H file rook all the way down to the 7th row on the board. Now, this controls this entire row here. So the king only has two spaces to go, either to F8 or D8, here and here. Now, no matter which one he chooses, our next move would be our A file rook all the way down to AH, putting the black king in checkmate. The reason it is checkmate is because this rook still defends this entire row, and our rook that we moved down to A8 is defending this entire row, which is also putting the king in check, but the king cannot move out. And that is called checkmate. Now we get to start talking about some of the fun pieces, starting off with the queen. The queen is the most active piece on the board, meaning it controls the most squares. So, how does it control more squares? Well, the queen can move as far as it wants diagonally in all directions. So if we move here, it can move all the way down here. It can move diagonally in any direction as far as it wants on the board. It can also move in a plus shape as far as it wants on the board. That's why it is the most active piece, because it controls the most squares out of any other piece on the board. Now, one thing about the queen is that it cannot hop over pieces. So this queen right now cannot hop over the king on its first move. Now we get to talk about the bishops. There are two bishops to start every game: the light squared bishop and the dark squared bishop. The reason they're called the light and dark square bishop is because the light square bishop can control the light squares, and the dark squared bishop can control the dark squares. Each bishop can move as far as it wants diagonally in any direction. So if this light squared bishop is moved out to d3, it can now move all the way to h7, a6, b1, and even f1. Same thing goes for the dark squared bishop, where now it can move to g1, c1, all the way to a7, and to h6. Now, let's talk about the knights. The knights are the only piece that can hop over other pieces. So, this is how a knight moves. A knight moves in an L shape. So, if a knight moves out here in an L, let's say black plays e6, the knight can now move to e5, to g1. If the king wasn't there, to e1, to g5, to h4, to h2, to d2, and to d4. That's why it is such a complex piece on the board, because it has so many different ways to move, and is a very hard piece to defend because it can hop over other pieces. And now finally, let's talk about the rooks. So, usually there are two rooks, as seen before, on the h1 square and the a1 square. The reason I have it here is so I can show you how a rook moves. The rook can move as far as it wants in a plus symbol, meaning it can move straight forward as far as it wants, straight backwards as far as it wants, to the right as far as it wants, and to the left as far as it wants. Just remember that the knight is the only piece that can jump over other pieces. So the rook is not attacking the king because the pawn is in between it. Now, we're going to talk about one of the special moves in chess called castling. Castling involves your king and either of your rooks. Castling short would look like your king moving from the E square to the G square and your H-file rook moving from the H square to the F square. So that would look like this. Now, this is only possible if you haven't moved your king or the rook you're trying to castle with. So if you move your rook here and back, you cannot castle anymore. Now, you can also do the same type of move, but this would be called long castling. It's where you move your king from the E square to the C square and your A file rook to the D square. It looks like this. You usually castle whenever you want to move your king out of danger. If your opponent short castles, you can long castle to take a attacking position, or castle short the same way your opponent castled to play a little more defensively. And finally, one of the last moves I want to show you guys is called en passant. So, it's usually in a late game situation where you have pushed any pawn, doesn't have to be the king's pawn, down the board to the point where if your opponent moves their pawn one space forward, you can take that pawn with your pawn. But if they move it 2 spaces forward, you and their pawn become side by side. And it looks like this. Now, in this position, white can perform a move known as en passant, which is where only when this happens, there is a side-by-side relationship between two pawns. The white pawn can take that pawn and end up behind the black pawn. Let's look at that one more time. This is only directly after the move that black moves 2 spaces forward. So if we now move the king, we can't perform en passant. Even if they let us, the game won't let us. We can't perform en passant. It has to be right after they move 2 spaces forward. Then and only then can we perform en passant. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you guys have a great day. Please make sure to subscribe and hit that like on the video. Please go down and comment what I should change about my videos. And please show this to your friends and family and spread the word about this channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the month. Thank you, and see you guys later.